There's one book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, and the author says, that idea of follow your passions is totally misleading, and fulfillment comes from getting really good at something. And then there's that idea of follow your passion, and that's what's going to give you happiness in life. If you keep your chin up and keep moving forward, you're going to end up in a good place.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Path Found, the podcast about the real, messy, unexpected journeys that lead us to the work we love. I'm Monica Argandonia, and every week I talk with someone whose story proves there's no single right way to build a meaningful life. We get honest about pivots, false starts, the people who helped us, and the moments that changed everything. If you're exploring your next step, rethinking your direction, or looking for inspiration from people who figured it out as they went, you're in the right place. If you like what you hear, please share the podcast with a friend, subscribe, and leave us a review. You can also find us on Instagram at PathFound Podcast or online at KeystoneNetwork.org. There you can send in your comments, suggest guests or topics, or even apply to be a guest yourself. This podcast is for you. As a longtime teacher and anthropologist, I've always believed in the power of stories. They remind us we're not alone and that it's okay to change your mind, take a different route, or still be unsure of what comes next. I'm glad you're here. Today on Path Found, I'm talking with someone whose journey is thoughtful, honest, and incredibly layered. Sierra Emrick grew up on California's Central Coast, surrounded by nature and shaped early on by navigating a complicated family dynamic that taught her compassion, patience, and the power of listening. She chased big dreams, first in marine biology, then in environmental studies, but her path led her into places she never expected. From an abalone farm to conservation work in Sri Lanka, from navigating cultural and personal challenges to returning home during the chaos of COVID, Sierra experienced both the beauty and the difficulty of following your passion into the unknown. Her story captures what so many young people feel, but rarely say out loud: the pressure to succeed, the fear of failing, the search for alignment, and the courage to start over when reality doesn't match the dream. I'm excited for you to hear this one. Here's my conversation with Sierra. All right, so thank you for joining me. I'm excited to have you. And I read something you posted about how when you were growing up, you loved to hear real stories. And you loved to hear real stories from your dad before you went to bed. And this is your chance to tell your story, because I am also inspired by people's stories. I think we need to listen to each other more. But I just want to give you an opportunity, because we've talked briefly, and I think you've had a pretty amazing career journey so far. And so I want to talk about that. But I'd like to start kind of where I always do. What were you like in high school, and what path did you see yourself taking?
Yeah, such a good question. From the beginning and looking back when I was very young, I kind of see myself as a strange kid. I grew up in a divorced family. My parents got divorced when I was 4. And I think that kind of set me on a certain path very early on of just being really, I was really sensitive to begin with, but I had to navigate being like a mediator really early on and just seeing both sides of every story and having a lot of patience and getting good at active listening, because I saw these two wonderful people that both saw each other in like kind of harsh realities, and they tell me stuff about one another, and I learned to see the best in people and also realize that, yeah, there's two sides to every story. So maybe that's where my story fascination started, but also kind of a compassion for just everyone. And I also think like I just wanted to do good for them. So I was a really driven kid. And right off the get-go, like in elementary school, I was trying so hard in school, so hard in sports. Definitely like that high achiever personality, maybe not for like the best reasons, Like, I feel like it came back and has bit me in the butt many times, but I'm also grateful for it because it kind of got me to where I am today. But I grew up on the Central Coast in a little town called Los Osos. Like I mentioned, I played a lot of sports. Both my parents were outdoor enthusiasts, so I was camping and backpacking and on the beach a lot, which I'm really grateful for and realize I'm really privileged to have had that upbringing. And so it was just natural for me to fall in love with this outdoor space, especially when I found friends who also loved the outdoors. I just fell in love with it more, and I felt like some of my greatest teachings in life have come from just observing nature and having experiences in nature with my friends, with my family, with my community. So yeah, just very early on, I knew I wanted to do something greater than myself to help the environment and help people. And yeah, I just like from a way too early age, I feel like I was just holding a lot of pressure to like do something big. And my dad would tell me these big, elaborate stories where he, was going on a fishing trip and he caught a fish. And, every time he told the story, the fish went from a foot long to 2 feet long to all of a sudden it's like a 12-foot shark.
Right.
So I think it taught me to dream big and think in these like elaborate ways.
But did you have an idea of how you could convert that wanting to do all of that into a job? Like, did you have a concept of, hey, this connects to this or this relates to that? Or
Yeah, so originally my greatest love was for surfing and being in the ocean, and I love dolphins in particular. So I wanted to be a marine biologist. I thought that was my path to having this impact on the health of the planet. And so I read as many books as I could get my hands on dolphins and the ocean. And whenever I was traveling, I'd really try to make an effort to go do work for a nonprofit that was focused on ocean health or something like that. So at first, my hopes and dreams as a little kid was to be this oceanographer. I wanted to go to UCSD, to Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and pursue that dream. So I guess I channeled it into this marine biology dream at first.
And so what happened?
So I did athletics my entire life. I did soccer and basketball and volleyball and track and field. And at the end of the day, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara. And I was so grateful because I came from a low income family and we could not afford to put me through college. So this was, probably another pressure why I worked so hard was I knew I needed to if I wanted to go to college. And so I got into UCSB and started pole vaulting for them. I was on their track and field team and it was great. I kind of immediately had this family of track athletes and I was studying marine bio and quickly realized that the larger problem that was impacting the oceans negatively was things happening on land were related to human behavior. And so I decided to switch. I changed my degree to environmental studies and got a minor in sustainable development focused in Latin American studies and that area of the world. I grew up going to Baja and that really influenced me as well. So I made a slight pivot of, okay, I'm going to study something I didn't know even existed and pursue that. And I had a lot of wonderful professors and met a lot of great activists that really showed me that I didn't necessarily like the hard science and being in a lab. I more so liked working with people. I loved community development work and really investigating what sustainable development was, or if that was, those two words often are kind of ironic when put together because who knows if we can make development sustainable. So yeah, my interests shifted and, I graduated college and thus begins my crazy career journey.
That's great. And you figured that out, that was the piece. So that part's just as important as the hard sciences. And so now you graduate and what happens?
Yeah. So I was working on an abalone farm before I graduated. I was really interested in aquaculture and its potential to sequester carbon and be a possible climate solution. It was kind of all the buzz at the time I was graduating. I wrote my senior thesis on what would it take to start a pilot program with seaweed aquaculture as a method for sequestering carbon, and spoke with all the seaweed farmers on the coast of California. But there were tie-ins at the abalone farm to seaweed. So I just was really interested in that whole realm of aquaculture and thought that, hey, maybe this is my way to combine my love for working in community and helping the planet. So I worked on this farm for over a year and got to a point where I just was realizing that I was feeding the 1% of the population. Abalone is really expensive, and that didn't feel really aligned with my morals anymore. And I also just had this crazy passion to travel, and the itch had not been scratched in a really long time. And so I decided I was going to quit and go to Chile. But due to a lot of different things happening in the world, Santiago was having major protests. My dad said, absolutely, you can't go there. So I pivoted decided, and I ended up going to Sri Lanka, which arguably is less safe. But he didn't know that. So we approved it. And I'm really close with my parents. So having their blessing on this trip was really important to me.
Why Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so kind of a crazy fusion of things I loved and was interested in. One, Buddhism is one of the prominent religions of Sri Lanka, and I was really interested in that philosophy. I studied it a little bit in college and was raised with a lot of Buddhist philosophy, so I wanted to go there for that reason. Two, there was the perfect position opening with a conservation organization called the Center for Ecological and Cultural Studies, run by a Sri Lankan team. Again, felt very morally aligned to the work I was interested in and working with the right people. And three, there is great surf. So selfishly, I just wanted to go see this amazing country and get some good waves.
Good reason.
So I stayed in Sri Lanka for 3 or 4 months working with this conservation organization. They were looking at the human-elephant conflict, which the low-income communities of Sri Lanka often are having high interactions with elephants. They share a space with these beautiful creatures that can also be quite dangerous. And they were trying to mediate that conflict through community education, through providing resources to help protect their crops and their farms and their fields. And I was along for the ride. I did a lot of English teaching while I was over there and just supported their team in whatever they needed. And it was extremely eye-opening experience. It was really humbling. I saw firsthand how much privilege I grew up with in terms of access to safety and security, being able to call the cops and know that the person showing up is there to protect you. You know, there was these basic needs that I thought were everywhere that when I went to Sri Lanka, I realized, no, I'm really lucky to have that. And I relied on those things for my own mental health, you know? So it was challenging in that regard too, like being away from home, traveling as a woman alone in Sri Lanka when I wasn't with this organization. And it was definitely hard. I didn't understand some of the cultural norms as well. There's a lot more like acceptance of domestic abuse and violence. And I was observing a conversation that was happening between my program director and her boyfriend at the time. And it just escalated. And I thought it was going to end really bad. So at one point I packed all my stuff. I climbed a tree and hid on the roof. Like stuff like that, you know, that it was intense. And it was, just so humbling, like I said. So anyways.
When you went there, did you have the job? Did you know what you were going to be doing? Or you just said, I'll find something when I'm there?
It was an internship. I had a mentor in college. His name was Kavi, and he grew up in Sri Lanka. And he had this connection. He said, hey, I've got this friend. She runs this organization. It sounds exactly like what you want to be doing. And it just seemed like the stars aligned perfectly for it. And so I did my research, but I don't think I did my research well enough of like what I was getting myself into. And I feel like a lot of recent grads might do that as well. So warning to all of you out there, make sure to vet the people you are going to go stay with and work with. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I learned some really wonderful things and got to be with some really wonderful people because of it. But yeah, that's how I found myself there. I was just their general intern, there for support and kind of developing my role as I was there, and we got to know one another.
So did you got paid? You were getting paid, and
I was allowed to live there for free.
Okay.
That was my compensation.
Okay.
They'd feed me and house me.
Okay. And how long were you there?
I was there for 3 to 4 months, and then COVID hit. And I had planned to continue on and go to Australia, do some like permaculture work there, get my certification in permaculture. But yeah, COVID hit and I had to get home fast. But I flew home and I had nowhere else to go. So I went to my childhood home in Los Osos, and my dad had an extra room. And so I lived with him for, I think it was about a year before I got my own place again. But came home, I got work that I could. I worked on a regenerative agriculture farm. I was writing a newsletter.
So you moved back home. I mean, how did you feel? Did you feel like lost? Did you feel this isn't how I planned it? Like, what's going through your head?
It felt like failure to a certain degree. Like I had all these crazy expectations of what would happen after I graduated, and just that I would land the dream job that I always wanted, that I worked so hard for, that I got straight A's for, that I did extracurriculars for, that I did internships for. And you graduate and you just enter into this abyss. And I think going to Sri Lanka was my way of handling the abyss. It gave me something that was meaningful that I could do and grow my skills. I was so lost when I went there. And then coming home so abruptly, I was so humbled over there that, to be honest, I was relieved to be home. But I did have this sense of like failure that I didn't find the thing. And that was hard to sit with, to be honest. And I think I just realized, like, getting down about it never has worked out. So I'm just going to keep moving, just keep following passion. And that's why, I used my local connections because I came home and my childhood friend's dad had a regenerative farm, and I started working for him because it was still in line with those goals. I want to work and do something good for the planet and do something good for people. And it aligned with that. So great, let's do it. So I don't know. I think that's such a great, thank you for making me pause for a second, because I think when we're telling these stories of our career path, we just kind of jump from one career to the next and don't elaborate how it was feeling. And I think that's the most important part. But I knew I just needed to keep moving forward. And that's what I did.
Because I think sometimes it sounds like, oh, you did this and then you did this and you did this. But there's a lot of other stuff happening, right? Self-doubt. You ended up back at home after, this great adventure, and then having wanted to go to Australia, and that didn't pan out. And so, yeah I think, that's normal. Like, we deal with that, but we don't talk enough about it. All right. So you're at this regenerative farm.
Yeah.
You're still doing something good for the planet.
Still aligned. We're still feeling okay.
Yes.
And there's this new company that started in Los Osos that was harvesting seaweed and selling it at farmers market. So I have to be involved. So I started harvesting seaweed for them. And they were also working on the farm. They were drying the seaweed on the farm property that I was working on. So it was this great little time of exploration, doing these one-off kind of weird jobs, getting by, and also just kind of riding out the COVID times. And there was a lot of fear in the air, and fear internally too, of what is my future going to be? This whole idea of me graduating and getting a job and then traveling and finding the job didn't work out, and I'm back at home. So yeah, definitely a hard time. I remember I was waking up every morning at 6 a.m. and I had a really structured routine. That's always how I've been of, I'd get up, do my kind of yoga flow, make coffee and oatmeal, and scroll LinkedIn and look for jobs and find something I was passionate about and write about it. Writing was always an amazing outlet for me. And throughout my entire life, I've always been a journaler. It helps me process my thoughts. I've got a very active brain. I've got pretty high anxiety. And writing was one of my coping mechanisms to help me process my big feelings, my big thoughts, and my successes, but mostly my failures, or what I deemed failures at the time. So yeah, I would have this routine of getting up and doing all those things, and then journaling and writing about what I was going through as almost self-healing, to be honest. And it just kept me going. It kept me going during that hard time. So after working on that farm and harvesting seaweed, I got another temp job. I was a translator for a farm in Baja who had a sales team where I was living. So I was calling the farm every morning. I was helping cross produce across the Mexican-American border and getting to, just that side of me that was so interested in Latin American culture, and especially with Baja, with my roots growing up there when I was little, or going there when I was little. It kind of fulfilled me in some way. So I enjoyed it a lot. It also was a desk job. And I realized, desk jobs aren't the end of the world. I actually enjoy them a little bit. So that was a big realization for me. And it kind of questioned my identity when I realized I was okay with a desk job. I think I always feared that. And I always was that person who was that's the nightmare. That's the thing I'm trying to avoid. But when I faced it, I was like, this is not so bad. Well, this is what the majority of Americans and people around the world are doing. And okay, I can handle this. So that was interesting. But after that, COVID's still going. I'm just trying to pick up work where I can. I worked at a cafe for a little bit. I don't think, I was always so driven that I did well in school. I had sports right after school. My life was very structured for all my time going to school, that I never had those traditional jobs of working in a coffee shop or, I don't know, customer service. And I had a weird craving for them. So working in this cafe I got to scratch that itch and spend some time in customer service and just, yeah, serving coffee and food. I really enjoyed it. So that was my next step. I went through our local Ocean Lifeguard Academy and became a lifeguard. And that's still to this day one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, being a public servant and protecting people and using my skills as like a surfer and ocean swimmer to do some good and help people and educate people on engaging in this really dynamic environment that can be super scary. And I helped run the junior lifeguard program in Morro Bay and eventually ran the junior lifeguard program. And it was just so special to be able to give back this experience that I had as a little kid. I was once a junior lifeguard. I started when I was 9 and I went all the way until I was 16, until I was instructing. And then I stopped when I went to college. But to be in charge of the program and provide that experience to little 9-year-olds through 16-year-olds was so meaningful to me.
Yeah.
It was hard. Like I mentioned, I'm a sensitive person and feel big emotions and care what other people think a lot. And I've worked on that my entire life, but it was really hard every day having to lead a group of young adults. And, I really cared what they thought and honestly was so scared of public speaking. And that was such a challenging time because I was just every day having to, tie my bootstraps and go out there and believe I could do it and prove to myself, I did it. Okay, I can do one more day. I did it again. And by the end of my last year running that program, I had just proven to myself I could do it. So that was actually one of the most meaningful jobs I've ever had. And it's funny because it was back in my hometown. It was doing this job that when I was young, I wouldn't have deemed the dream job or this big, amazing, life-changing job, but it was so meaningful to me because I pushed through something that really challenged me and I was afraid of. And it gets a little complicated because ocean lifeguarding in Morro Bay only happens during the summer. So during the school year, my partner was going to San Diego State. So I would work the summers lifeguarding and running the junior guard program, and then we'd move to San Diego where he was going to school. So that first school year, I did outdoor education at Camp Cuyamaca in San Diego. That was awesome. Got to experience camp life. And then I applied to grad school and I really thought I was going to get in. So I was like, okay, I got 6 more months of freedom before I go back into school. And I was like, I got to go abroad again. So I applied for jobs abroad and I ended up landing one in Panama as a volunteer program coordinator for a nonprofit called Give and Surf. They're based in Bocas del Toro, an archipelago in Panama. And I was going to be placed on Bastiamento, this island in Bocas. And I would run the volunteer program over there, run the volunteer house. And I was so excited because, again, it seemed like that dream job I've been waiting for. I get to work with people from all around the world. I get to interface with this beautiful local community. There is an Afro-Caribbean community and an indigenous community called the Nobe community that were living on this island together. And I was just so excited to go experience this other culture and speak Spanish and contribute to this nonprofit that seemed to be doing a lot of good in the community. They were training local people to become teachers and then run schools. And I was working in those schools and then helping place these volunteers from all over the world in those schools, in the community centers that the nonprofit ran. But that also was just another case of I had these really high expectations and ideas of what it was going to be like. And when I got there, it was just so different. And, I was humbled by the fact that a lot of people there probably didn't want me there because I looked like another part of the problem. These developing worlds, quote unquote, are getting inundated a lot of the times by tourism and unsustainable development. And I looked like just another tourist. People didn't get that I was coming there to help in the schools. So I felt this kind of animosity. And as a person who is really aware of how others think of me and what they're thinking, it was hard to handle that. And then pair that with constant reggaeton throughout the night and insomnia coming up for me. It was hard. And I made it through my 6 months I got to meet some incredible volunteers from all over the world. I worked with some really incredible local teachers, and the kids in these schools were just the best. That was my favorite part of the whole experience, was getting to know these kids and experience their life and be a part of it. I also taught a lot of like surf programs over there and got to use surfing as a tool for empowerment. And that felt really good. And it was just this really beautiful exchange of like, I'm learning from them, they're learning from me. And yeah, I guess it also is one of those cases where like, I think I look at it now and it looks really dreamy and awesome, but how it actually felt was very different. Like I was really struggling at the time with insomnia, and I feel like all my mental health issues of the past really like came to the surface because I just didn't have that like baseline security of community and security in general. And when it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you don't have that foundation, you just can't feel good. You can't get to that top. So, you know, it felt like that bottom level of the triangle was pulled out from under me again. And I really struggled mentally to feel good in Panama. And, you know, I wasn't with my partner and it was very challenging.
So you had done this Sri Lanka trip that was difficult and it wasn't what you wanted. Like you came back and realized, well, that wasn't it. And then what was this desire like to go do something like that again? And then kind of the same. I mean, these are incredible experiences, and no matter what, you learned a ton, you grew, like, you know, no regrets, but still again to go back and then not have it be what you wanted. Like what drove you to keep doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was Sri Lanka. I got cut short. So I felt like I still was curious of what was out there, and maybe it'll work if I don't have COVID pulling me back home. But also I just still had that huge built up expectation or fantasy of what I thought work was going to feel like, what types of activities I would be doing at my job would be like. And I was craving that still. I thought maybe it's out there. I still had that twinkle in my eye of like, let's go see if that dream job is going to surface. And I think it's different for everyone, right? Like someone could go have this experience and love it and fall in love with the place and the people, and it's great. But that just wasn't what happened for me. I realized like with the, you know, kind of honoring my own sensitivities and vulnerabilities, I realized, no, I need home to feel good. And I really value my own community and think that I can do the most good in my own community. And I saw like unsustainable development happening in front of me, and it was kind of morally curious to me it was a moral conflict being there because I felt a bit like a part of the problem, you know? So yeah, I think to answer your question of like, why'd you do it again? I just was still curious, even after Sri Lanka, of is it out there, that dreamy thing, that pot of gold at the other end of the rainbow? I had to go check it out again.
Good for you for pursuing that. Like, I'm going to try one more time. I have to know. Okay, so you're there 6 months?
Yes. And I finished my 6 months. I come home and I honestly had endured so much trauma, like mentally, that I got a therapist. I had to do a lot of inward searching at that time. And I just wanted to have like a super mellow job when I got back. So I was a park aide for the San Alejo Lagoon in San Diego. And just like nature's so healing. And I was just outside every day, hiking trails, rebuilding trails, interfacing with the public, telling them about this beautiful ecological reserve. That was probably the most healing part of my therapy journey, was just being outside all the time. Yeah, so I did that and went back, ran junior guards. And that was... So when I was a park aide at San Alejo, that was like the final stint of time in San Diego before my partner graduated. So once we went home to Morro Bay after that stint at San Alejo, we were staying. You know, we had no need to go back to San Diego. He was done with school. And so I ran junior lifeguards again and had a wonderful time. Same challenges, you know, but overcame and felt really good about the work I did there. And then one day at the end of the lifeguarding season, one of the harbor patrol officers that work closely with the lifeguards, he came over to me and he said, "What are you doing after this, Sierra? Like, where are you going to go next? What country?" And I had no idea. I was like, well, back to LinkedIn scrolling, it's been almost 5 years since I graduated. I know the routine, but I'm not giving up. And he said, well, my wife runs this nonprofit called Central Coast State Parks Association, and they support all the state parks in San Luis Obispo County, and they're hiring. She's looking for a community outreach coordinator. And I was like, community outreach, got it. I grew up here. I love this place. Outreach, one of my natural inclinations is talking to people and doing community building stuff. And so I applied and got the job. Will never forget my interview. It was the day after I had my first CPR resuscitation on the beach. So I was like kind of in a rough place. And my boss, the person hiring me, she knew about it. And so we had this pretty deep talk about what had just happened. She was kind of making sure I was okay. And I think just connecting on that really deep level was maybe what got me the job, because we realized we clicked. We were going to work good together. We had similar beliefs and morals. And I came with a lot of experience working in nonprofits and working for county parks and working for city parks and rec. So it was a great fit, and I got the job and everything was going great. I, of course, was just like adjusting to the new work environment and the new people. And I don't know, I still was looking on LinkedIn because I wasn't sure if it was the right fit. But 3 months in, our executive director got word that she essentially got her dream job. And, it was just such a great opportunity that she had to take it. And the rest of the staff, myself included, didn't know what was going to happen. I just got this job and I was like, great, and now I'm going to lose it. But the board got together, the board of our nonprofit, or Central Coast State Parks Association. We call it CSPA because we've got a long name, but the CSPA board got together and said, hey, what about Sierra? So finally, after 5 years of searching for kind of a nice, stable, good job, I think I got my big career break, and I got offered the job as executive director. I was co-directing with another coworker who had worked there for a while, but she was moving to Washington to get married in a few months. So I had this 2 months to train with her and co-direct, and then boom, I'm out on my own being the executive director at CSPA. And that was a wild ride, like getting to know how to run a nonprofit, but that's kind of where we land today. That's the journey, the long-winded journey.
So why do you think you got that job? Like, why did they give you'd been there 3 months. Why did they make you, and I understand it's a small organization, but why did they make you executive director? What do you think it was?
I think it's all the crazy stuff I had done before and the fact that I was still standing.
Right?
They said, this girl's resilient and she's got experience working in a million different fields. And I also had that, I think, just maybe emotional maturity, because I've been through some heavy stuff. I've seen some heavy stuff. I personally have gone through some heavy stuff. And there was this level of stability deep down that I think they saw and gave them confidence that I could withstand another rough patch, which any executive director will tell you when you first start, it's really hard.
Right.
So they trusted me because of that background that, felt like this crazy whirlwind of a career path. But I think it eventually paid off and allowed me to have the credentials to get this job.
Well, congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you.
But going back, so all of these different, you mentioned a mentor in college, but through all this, who did you have? Like, you're close to your family, you had a partner, were those your main people? Were there other advisors or mentors, helping you at all?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have 2 parents that just always encouraged me to dream big and go for it. So they supported whatever I did. That was huge. I have a lot of teachers throughout my school, my academics, that I thank for empowering me to believe in myself and inspiring me on certain paths. For example, I had a science teacher, Mr. Hoskins at Los Osos Middle School, who just made me so excited about science and made me feel like this was for me and I could do it. I had an English teacher, Mr. Perry, who he was the first person to tell me I was a good writer. Before that, I'm pretty dyslexic. I thought I was terrible at it. And so there were key people that I think encouraged me. And then coaches as well. Gregory Wilson, my pole vault coach in high school, he just, same thing, believed in me. And it's so critical to have people around you who believe in you no matter what, because it's going to be hard and you're going to need people on your team who tell you you can do it, because there's days when you definitely don't feel like you can do it. So definitely was lucky to have a lot of those mentors throughout my life. And yeah, same thing in college. I had some really wonderful professors, and, I just love talking with people. So, I'd be at a coffee shop, and that's how I met Kavi, my friend from Sri Lanka, and was always fascinated with people's stories. And so wanted to listen to his life story, and we just became great friends, and I got to learn from his personal experience. And I feel like my whole life I was learning all these little golden nuggets of wisdom from people through storytelling, and being able to help that guide my own path.
So how long have you been the executive director?
It's been 2.5 years.
So, obviously they don't want to hear that you might move on one day, but,
Yeah.
you're not likely to do this forever. What do you see as kind of the next steps? What are your goals? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, it's funny. A lot has changed and a lot has stayed the same. So I think my goals now are much different than when I was, a recent grad. Now I'm just trying to have a good lifestyle and live in a place I love and have time to do the activities I love, like surfing, feel like I'm giving back. It's just more basic needs, which it took me a long time to realize that's okay to want that. So my goal is just to find, another career that is going to meet those needs. But when I say a lot hasn't changed, I'm still looking for careers that are morally aligned with who I am and that are going to contribute to healing our planet and people, because those two, the environmental crisis and the social crises we face today, are so intimately connected. So I just know I'm going to continue being in that sort of space.
Nice. You talked about surrounding yourself by good people. You still feel like you have those people around you?
Yeah. When I came back home the first time from COVID, I looked around and all my childhood friends were gone, but there was such incredible people around my hometown. It surprised me. There's all these Cal Poly students that had chosen to stay in the area. And I found this incredible group of women that I could tell my deepest thoughts to and feel supported. And they were weird and just fun,
Yeah.
And so I still have that friend group today that I just love, and the community has grown. So yeah, I'm continued to be surrounded by really inspiring people. I don't remember the exact quote, but there's something along the lines of, you're the summary of like the top 3 people you spend the most time with. And I'm very aware of that fact and try to spend the majority of my time around people I really love and I'm really inspired by.
Yeah. And you got to surround yourself with people who lift you up, right? And have your back. So looking back, you've had quite the adventurous life, and knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell your graduating from college self?
I, from day one, have just put a lot of pressure on myself, and I wish I could just tell my graduating self that, it's not going to be exactly what you thought, but it's all going to be okay, and it's going to work out for the best, as long as you just keep your chin up and keep moving forward. Just don't give up. And when things go wrong, remember that that's what defines you as a person, and that's what's going to give you strength as a human being. So don't see it as a failure, because I struggled with that idea of failure, and I still do. But I think Panama and Sri Lanka kind of helped me face that head on, to not see those, what you deem as failures, as actual failures. They're just another attempt at trying to be human and figure all this out.
And you did it. Those aren't failures. You went and did it. There's so many people who would have just, they talk about it, and for better or worse, and whatever happened, it might not have been what you thought, but now right?
Right.
You did it. So any last thoughts? Anything you want to throw out there in the universe?
I think just that idea of, if you have a really big dream, it's okay. And don't give up. Just give yourself grace when things don't go exactly your way, and don't be scared of pivoting, and don't see it as a failure. There's something to be said about pursuing your passion. There's something to be said at just like picking something and getting really good at it to help you in your career path. I feel like they're two philosophies, like there's one book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And the author says, that idea of of follow your passions is totally misleading. And like fulfillment comes from getting really good at something and being able to be a mentor to others, and just this whole different philosophy on like how to find a career path. And then there's that idea of follow your passion, and that's what's going to give you happiness in life. And I think everybody is different, and we all are going to have our own career journey and path. And just know that if you keep your chin up and keep moving forward and believe in yourself and surround yourself with people who love you and want to support you, you're going to end up in a good place. It's not going to be the place you thought you'd be, but it's going to be a good place, and it's going to be okay.
I think that is great and great advice, and something that we should all remember. Sierra, thank you so much. It was a great conversation, and I know you're going to continue to do great things for the planet and people.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And likewise, this is such a wonderful idea and podcast, and good on you for actually going for it and making it a podcast instead of just dreaming about it and letting it float around there. You did it. That's so cool. And I'm sure it's going to help so many people and kind of ground people and their big dreams. Maybe someone out there like me will go, oh, okay, I'm not failing. You know, it's all part of my personal development. So thank you for creating a platform for people to share their stories.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Path Found. If anything we talked about today connected with you or gave you a new perspective, we'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared the episode with someone you care about. You can also find us on Instagram at Path Found Podcast. To explore more stories, resources, and ways to get involved, visit KeystoneNetwork.org. This podcast is just one part of the journey. At Keystone Network, we're helping young people and anyone figuring it out as they go build meaningful futures one step at a time. A huge thank you to my podcast editor, David Strutt. You can find him on LinkedIn for helping bring these stories to life, and to Elizabeth Miner at Silvermine Creative for the beautiful artwork and web design. And if you're on your own path, navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or simply figuring it out as you go, just know you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there's always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Path Found.